Thank you for joining this simulation room. So basically, we're just going to go through the process of the self-assessment score. So when you go into the tool online, just going to be using this down here, you will, as you can see, you will go into the website of the framework and you'll scroll down and then you'll click into the self-assessment tool, and that will bring this page up. And then we're going to make it nice and big and we're going to go through this process. So what we need to do is actually use a case study. So does anyone want to put their hand up to assess their organisation, their interagency? You know, does anyone want to volunteer to do that? You don't have to say what agency you're from, but, you know, we need you to answer the questions. We can do it as the forum, but I'd like to ask if anyone would like to do it. That's probably a example, maybe. That's actually great. Yeah, look, that's fine, because anybody can use this tool, irrespective of how far you are in the process of culturally responsive practice. So we will use an agency called Orange Community Services. All right. Poor Orange. I just looked at the colour. Orange Community Services. So, Catherine, you will be helping us out in terms of this particular exercise. So we kick off and it starts off telling you what is the readiness assessment score, because clearly it's a new tool that you'll be using. And it sort of tells you that it's about providing you with information to support your journey into towards culturally responsive practice. You can apply this to like your program. You can apply it to your interagency. You can apply it to your whole organisation. It really doesn't matter. You just need a point of reference. Okay, and you can use this tool independently. So if you use no other tool, you can actually use this independently. We recommend that you use all the tools because they actually interrelate and gives you a broader picture, but you can just use this tool and it'll still make sense. So how do you complete the readiness self-assessment? So, you know, it actually, as we said, it examines your readiness in relation to those sections that we went through today. Okay, so you know the wheels that we talked about, you know, those 3 wheels and the harms, the stresses, the strategies, but also those fundamental frames of cultural knowledge, practice and change. So the questions we'll be answering today for Orange Community Services is based on that framework. There are 10 indicators, and just 10 indicators across all those 5 sections. For each of those indicators, you actually have to go through 4 steps. Step 1 is you've considered it. Okay, have you even thought about this? And if you have, guess what? You get a point. Okay. Step 2 is, have you planned, or are you planning to do something about it? Because there's plenty of stuff. I know you and me, there's plenty of stuff we've gone beyond considering. We've actually planned it, but we haven't actually moved it forward yet. Step 3 is where you move it forward and you've commenced implementation. So you're actually doing something, you're working on it right now. And step 3 is implementation, and step 4 is where you've embedded it in your organisation and it's common practice. It's just how you do stuff. Okay, so for each of the indicators, you've got to click each step that you have taken and completed. Don't miss a step, because if you go, oh, we've embedded this, you're not going to get your point for considering it, planning it, etc. So when we finish the self-assessment score, we will be sending, you get a copy of your results. So the idea is that you can actually do this time and time again. So you might, in fact, you want to start it at the outset. You want to see how you're tracking. It tells you where you can do some work, and then you might come back in 3 months and you might do it again and see whether you've progressed. And it gives you a quantitative number. It gives you a score, so you can say, oh wow, you know, we're moving forward on this, because none of us are going to be able to do everything, but at least it sort of supports you to make some progress. Okay, were those instructions clear? I had someone test this. They came back and they said, you know, like, I've embedded all this stuff, but I only got 10%. Well, what's that about? You know, so what, did you tick everything? Did you read the instructions? No, I didn't read the instructions. So read the instructions. Key message, read the instructions. So don't forget, no right or wrong answers. It's a tool to support your journey. It's a guide to assess. It's not this black and white. It's some resources. And it will move you closer if you use it towards embedding culturally responsive practice to address gambling-related harm. And take it as many times as you want until you reach where you want to be. Okay, welcome to the Readiness Self-Assessment Score. Orange Community Services, are you ready? Here you put your details. Now, for the sake of confidentiality, I'm going to put my details. The reason your details are captured here is because you will receive an email with your result, okay? But I'm going to put my details. Okay, so details in, let's start the self-assessment. Okay, we start with those fundamental frames. Remember the big grey ones? So Catherine from Orange Community Services. On the left-hand side is the program, service or organisation. Any of these apply. So Catherine, we're assessing Orange Community Services, which is at a service level. So the first question we have to ask you is, Orange Community Services is designed to reflect cultural norms and values. So in the design of your service, because remember we talked about cultural knowledge, cultural practice, cultural change. So when Orange Community Services is doing its planning and its design, is it based on cultural norms and values? Yeah, you design your services based on that?
Yeah, I'd say we'd be at step 3 for that one.
Okay, so you've considered it,
yep,
you've planned it, and you're actually implementing it. When you design your services in relation to gambling-related harm, you consider cultural norms and values in your local community. The next one is, have you implemented your service using bilingual and bicultural skills?
Sorry, can I go back a step? I thought this was organisationally as a whole, or you're talking about it just in relation to gambling harm?
Your organisation as a whole.
As a whole, yep.
Yep. Have you implemented your service using bicultural and bilingual skills?
Yes.
So you've considered it?
Yep.
You've planned it?
Yep.
You've implemented. Have you embedded it in your practice? Is
Yes.
it just a really you know, business as usual? Awesome. So that's embedded as well. Has Orange Community Services is it embedded through engagement with whole populations and or community leaders champions? So is Orange Community Services really embedded in that local community? You've got these community leaders on board, or you've got champions, or you're really engaging with sort of whole populations?
I'd like to say further along, but I think with COVID, we've sort of lost a bit of that. So we've certainly considered and planned, but I'm not sure that it's happening right now.
Okay, great. All right, so that's in terms of those fundamental frames, you know, around designing service, cultural practice and so on. Now we want to talk about those harms, those 7 harms: financial, relationships, emotional, psychological, health, work, study, economic activity, criminal and cultural harms. So that's that second wheel. So now, Catherine, Does Orange Community Services use a practice tool that considers and addresses the interrelated harms? Have you got a screening tool? Have you got some tool in place that your staff and your team can draw on to be able to assess, consider and address those interrelated harms?
Not at the moment.
Have you considered it?
We've considered it, yes.
Okay. Have you planned it, or at this stage you're
No.
just thinking about how you might do that? Great. Catherine, has Orange Community Services, does it have staff trained in gambling-related harm specifically?
No.
Have you considered it?
Absolutely.
Okay. But you haven't planned it yet?
No.
Okay. Now we'll move to those stressors, and these are those sort of contributors to gambling-related harm, vulnerability for experienced by culturally and linguistically diverse communities. You know, those help-seeking socioeconomics, migration experience, and so on. So, Catherine, has Orange Community Services, does it have all staff trained in culturally responsive practice on a regular basis? Not gambling related harm, but just, you know, regularly upskilling your staff and engaging training around professional development around culturally responsive practice?
Yes.
Embedded?
So not quite embedded, I don't think, but certainly implemented.
Okay, okay. Catherine, does Orange Community Services, does it know how and where to refer a client or a community member who is experiencing stress as a result of gambling related harm? So does everyone in Orange Community Services, someone turns up at the door to put their children in out of school care and, you know, how you going today? They start crying, they present with some, does everyone in your service know how and where, click of a button, how to refer someone who's experiencing or presenting with stress as a result of gambling-related harm?
They probably wouldn't know straight away, but they would know where to go to get info, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you've certainly considered that, and it's part of your practice. You've certainly planned it and you're beyond that. And you've implemented it?
I guess because we do a referral for anything that comes to us.
Yeah.
You know, general community centre, so people will disclose all
specifically in relation to gambling related harm. So would you say it's implemented, or it doesn't sound like it's embedded?
No.
Is it implemented, do you think?
Was that they're all referral, like that process for all referrals is, but not that specific.
Okay.
So example, something came in on Friday with something I'd never heard of before, but, you know, a quick Google search by one of my staff, we were able to get the information needed. So not a clear process for every instance, but I guess the process
no half marks here. So, but it's your choice. Well, you know your organisation, you know Orange Community Services. Has it been implemented and not quite embedded? Or are you still, well, you know, have you commenced implementation? It's not just about, you know, I mean, commencing implementation is also implementation.
No, I'd probably leave it where we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we'll move on to the strategies. The 6 key strategies that we found through the research is the ones you need to apply in an interrelated way, okay? You don't just focus on one thing, offer a counselling service and that's that. You need to strategically think about how to engage with communities, how to look at how you can tailor your service, draw in lived experience, etc. So, Catherine, does Orange Community Services lead or collaborate on a gambling harm minimisation initiative?
No.
Have you considered it?
That's why I'm here.
Awesome. But you haven't planned it yet? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay. Has, Catherine, Orange Community Services completed the Practice Matrix Review and Design e-template that's available as part of the package here to develop your actions?
No.
Okay. I'm guessing you haven't even considered it because you didn't know it was available, right?
That's right.
That's right. So once you know it's available and you think about it, you get a point, right? Because the question will, that's why we suggest you actually look at the entire package. You don't have to do everything, but at least it gives you a sense of what's available. And just some general readiness. Catherine, has Orange Community Services, do they have a strategy or an action plan or a policy in place that documents its position and its progress towards addressing gambling-related harm?
No.
Have you considered it?
Absolutely.
Have you planned it?
Define planning. So
you define, because it's up to you. When you're doing this self-assessment, you have to define it. Because your score will reflect where you're at in terms of progressing through these steps.
So I guess as an organisation, no, but for me, I've got a plan in my mind to how to take the organisation in that direction. Do you head up
the organisation?
It's got to go through the board. So
yeah.
So no, just leave it at this point.
All right. All right. So now you have an option. Make sure you've clicked on each step. Don't forget clicking considered. Don't forget clicking planned and, you know, that process. So you've got a chance to go back and have a look and to just check and make some changes, or you can just submit it. All right. For the purposes of today's simulation and because of time, we are sending the results, and Orange Community Services score is 32%. All right. So that gives you a starting point. That now you decide how you progress from there. So you might, you can go back and retry or review the self-assessment. You can visit the framework because there's some things you're not clear on. And you can get a detailed report that gives forget the past, don't worry about past, this system, we can't work out how to fix that. But it basically says that this is how you're tracking. Orange Community Services is doing pretty good when it comes to those fundamental frames, right? Cultural knowledge, cultural practice, cultural change. It's, you know, it's doing okay. And it's also doing okay in terms of the stresses. But in the areas it needs to work on is the strategy, the overall strategy, as well as the harms. And now this, you can print the results. You can, and because you know how I emailed it to myself? So I'll just show you, we'll go to my email. So when you see my email, just ignore the number of, is it up there? Yes, it is. Okay, so we will look at my email and we will show the blocked content and it will start to tell you. So each of those things that we asked. So the first one, don't worry about the correct and past and all that sort of stuff, but around the fundamental frames, it sort of gives you a sense of how you're tracking with that. So you can see that you have passed some and others you haven't. Well, not passed, but some you're doing well in and others you haven't. Or you can go back to the readiness self-assessment score and you can review as well, so you can see and correlate. Now that email that I sent myself, I think I did it correctly, and remember I'm being Stephanie today, but I will check in and make sure that that's correct. But nevertheless, it gives you a sense of how you're tracking. And then what you can do is you can go back and you can redo the self-assessment score at different points in time. Again, it really is just a tool to help you start to think about the tasks and strategies that you're putting in place. So, questions, comments? Julie.
Thanks, Billy. That's great. And my question is just whether there would be any de-identified data that you're collecting that might show you a shift over time in people's engagement in this area that can then feed back into other changes you might make in the tools, and would also be useful for organisations like NCOS in changes that are happening.
to just play with this to get us to the right screen. Yes, I didn't actually finish the progress of the slide, but we are collecting. So we don't get copies of anyone's emails. So it's confidential, and that's sort of outlined at the front end. So we don't get the scores, and we don't know how people are tracking. And the only reason for that is because we're a really IT savvy team, and we just haven't got to that step yet. But we certainly want to see how we want de-identified data, and so that we can track how people are using it. But what we do is we are collecting some feedback, and that is voluntary. So people can feedback and say, oh, geez, this didn't make sense. This didn't work. This was awesome. And that is a little bit indicative of, you know, how we can improve the tool. And every one of the tools we have this option of what do you think, and tell us. So we're capturing that information. That obviously is not reflective of the number of people using the tool, but we also capture data in terms of engagement with that page. So we'll know how many people are at least clicking on it. We won't really know how many people have completed it, not at this point in time. Any other questions or comments? Anyone from Zoom who has any questions? I can see Turkan up there. Hello, Turkan and Sonia. Oh, someone's here from GWC, Greek Welfare Centre. Wonderful. Any questions from Zoom or from the floor? Further questions?
No, I just want to say thank you. I think that will be really useful for our organisations and interagencies that we're part of, and really help, help strategise and plan for the future and see where the gaps are. So, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And look, absolutely. So you can take it to an interagency meeting, put it up there, and then what you'll be able to do is say, do we as an interagency do this? Do we have this? Do we do that? And if you don't, that's okay. But at least you can sort of track where you're at in that journey, and you can develop a plan to move forward. One of the other tools is the practice e-template, design and review, and that essentially will be your plan. So that is, if you go through the tools, so basically you can go in there, there's a digital version and there's a download version in paper, so you can print it off if you want, and it'll just ask you questions very similar to this. What are you going to do about this? So it's really simple. You don't need to have a 5-day planning session with an external facilitator. Just answer the questions honestly and put your heads together. And then that also you can email to yourself, and that becomes your plan. It's really that simple, but it's a way of bringing that framework to life. So it's not just a pretty document on the shelf. And we will refine it as we go. Any other questions or comments? Anything from Zoom, Charlton? Okay. So how am I going with time? Oh, one more question. Yeah. I'm the timekeeper and I'm asking how am I going with time.
Hi, Billy. You know I'm from the forum, so
yes.
I should know this. Hi. But just for the benefit of everybody, will there be any consultancy type service available from the forum to assist people in, you know, action planning to, you know, around this issue?
Yeah.
So once they do the scores, but will there be some consultancy they can draw upon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we will continue keeping this resource live, and we absolutely would be happy to come to your organisation or your interagency and to help you work through that and to help you develop your action plan. So there's no question of that. We can certainly send, and you know, we have team members who know this very well. And so, you know, just give us a ring and we can sort of talk that through. But the tools, of course, as well are developed in a way so that you can just do it yourself. But that doesn't mean that, you know, we're not happy or willing to come out and work with you. Catherine.
Can I go again? You're just
sure.
Curious about like the data available. I'm just thinking because I am a community centre in a specific area, like how I can access data on that area so I can know I'm moving in the right direction, I guess. I know my starting.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of culturally and linguistically diverse communities and gambling related harm, you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a note of that. We do have the section in the clearinghouse. Now, the framework clearinghouse is live, so there'll be new information that's added and changed and removed. I mean, Himanshu's research will be putting up there as well, and access to data. So in terms of, I'm going to look to my trusted experts. Do they dig down? How far do they drill down to neighbourhood level in terms of data? We know by club, don't we? And then we can compare club and local neighbourhoods with the region and also nationally and at a state level. We can dice that data like that, can't we, or not? Yes. See, I just knew intuitively. You look at data long enough, you sort of know. Thank you, Tom, for that. The nod was good. Yes, so there'll be links in the clearinghouse for you to be able to look at that. But again, you know, really data savvy around that stuff. So happy to provide any support and come out and do some training with organisations. Nadiana?
There was one question in my breakout room in regards to the populating of resources on the website. And I just want to kind of raise this question here as well. The question was, with the case studies, with the storybook, will there be more added as time goes on?
Yes, absolutely. So absolutely, no question. It's a live resource. And we've entered into territory that is new for us. Simulating stories as part of our go-to tools for sector development and for influencing policy is a new area that, thank you, COVID, we all of a sudden, we were IT savvy as it was, but now we're really IT savvy. So yes, so the storybooks, for example, actually they're sitting in the office. There'll be voiceovers, so there's access to that information as well, so you don't have to read it, you can listen to it. We haven't quite finished that compilation. They'll be up as we come across new case studies, we'll upload those as well.
Thank you.